What's going on, party people? Welcome back to the last episode of this season of the pod. Today I'm going to tell you a story. That's right, people. We are back with another episode of the Art Lessons Podcast, where here we express real-time ideas about building a creative life. My name is Dave Conrey, and let's get started with the storytelling, shall we? As I alluded to last time, this is the last episode of this season, and I am going to talk about storytelling. I consider myself a little bit of a storyteller. That's one of the things that I tell people when I introduce myself. I usually get some curious looks when people ask, Dave, what do you do? And I say, I'm a storyteller. And they look at me like, what? But yes, that's what I do. I tell stories. I tell stories here on the podcast, here in the video, because I believe that storytelling is the way that we bring people in to attention of our things and stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit about storytelling and why it's important. Even more specifically, I want to talk about story arcs. Now, before I get into story arcs, a little backstory on what this is all about. Why am I talking about this? I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. Big surprise. I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, and you might be surprised at some of the stuff I watch. I actually watch a lot of filmmakers or people who talk about filmmaking, because even though I'm not making feature films, I believe that there are lessons that I can learn from what these people are saying to implement to myself here. Listen, podcast people, this one's going to be a little bit visual. Get as much as you can out of listening. And then if you feel like you didn't quite get the full effect, then please hop on over to youtube.com/Dave Conrey and check it out. And while you're there, subscribe and also hit that little bell button so you never miss a thing. And I'm talking to everybody at this point. So anyway, I listen to a lot of storytelling people. A lot of people talk about storytelling. And one of the things that they talk about is story arcs. Basically, the generation of a story from this point over here, point A, all the way over here to point Z. It is that arc that creates the compelling story that makes you engaged and makes you want to sit through the entire thing. So now I'm going to introduce to you a diagram. I need tools. This is the visual part of the story, folks. So within every single successful story, there is an arc. There's a start, there's a middle, and there's the end. The start is basically where we start learning what the whole story is about. Who are the people? Who are the players? What is the circumstance while we are listening to this story? The middle is where the beef starts coming in, where you really start to learn about what's happening. This is where the conflict happens. The bad stuff starts to go down. And then, of course, the final is where resolution occurs and where happiness happens. If it's a not so happy story, at least you get an idea about an ending. Okay, pretty rudimentary stuff, I know, but bear with me for a second. Many of you have probably heard the analogy of the very basic story. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. That's the main story arc throughout the story, but it's not the only arc that happens. Within every single story, there are multiple arcs happening all throughout the whole thing. A movie I recently watched was La La Land. If you haven't seen it, go see it. A little bit of a spoiler here, sorry, but it's been long enough, you should have seen it by now. But I just saw it. The whole boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back is kind of what happens in that story. Sort of. The end is a little bit different. Doesn't quite happen quite that happy, but it still happens. And within that story, there are all these tiny little arcs that happen. Like, for instance, when they meet on the freeway, they start in a particular situation. There is tension built up within that situation, and then there is resolution, which really comes down to a middle finger. In the middle, there is this story about their independent professional lives, where they want to be, what they are actually doing, and how that all plays out. And that creates tension amongst them, as well as tension in their own situations. If you took that movie and broke it down, you would see that there are all these different little arcs that happen in each act, within each scene, between each character. Everybody's got their own arc happening, along with the arc that's happening together, as well as the arc of the main story. So the context of every story is basically understanding the characters, finding the tension and the struggle, and then getting the resolution. Doesn't this pretty much sound like your everyday life, except on a perpetual basis. So you and I are constantly living a consistent story arc. The arc of your day could be a story arc unto itself. Arc of your week, the arc of your years, the arc of your decades. Those are all different story arcs that are happening within you and me. It's why so many people are compelled to write their story, to go create their own autobiography, talk about themselves on video. It's why so many people do that, because they know that they are living a story unto themselves. However, not every story is great. In fact, a lot of stories suck a lot, and mine might be one of those that sucks. I haven't fully established the struggle, the tension. Maybe I have in my head or in my thoughts and my process and everything I'm doing, but I haven't illuminated you all the time. So to fully understand struggle, we need to understand, obviously, the elements. We've got the protagonist. We need to understand the antagonist. What is that thing that is creating the tension? I've heard this before: man versus machine, man versus God, man versus government, man versus the people, man versus himself. These are all protagonist-antagonist situations, and they apply to pretty much everything you do. You are going through your daily life, and you just can't seem to keep your shoes tied. That's man versus machine of some degree. When you are battling with your spouse on a regular basis, man versus man. When you are struggling with your own mindset issues, that's man versus himself. 50% of you are probably women, so I'm using the term man with a grain of salt. Now, if I look at my story arc of my life right now, from where I started as a boy, born clueless, to living my life to a point where, like, say in my 20s and 30s, where I was just like completely baffled about what I was supposed to be doing, where I was going, what my expertise was, why I was even existing, to the point of where I'm getting to this area over here, which only is the time between my birth and now, because obviously I'm not planning on dying today or tomorrow. So my arc is going to continue, and creating the tension area in the middle here is going to expand. It's going to be larger, and my life lesson through the middle is going to be a lot bigger. But again, my life is not one arc, but multiple different arcs that I happen to go through on a regular basis. And in fact, one of the story arcs that I happen to be going through at this exact time in my life is, what am I doing with all of this stuff, this vlogging and all of this podcasting and all of this Instagramming and sharing my stuff everywhere? In the beginning of the story, you get to understand who I am when it comes to this stuff. Dave likes to do the videos and podcasts, and he really likes to tell stories, but then he gets here to the middle and he finds out that it's not as easy as he thought it was. He's not gaining the followers that he's looking for, and he's still pushing through, and there's all the ebbs and flows of everything that happens within that arc. And then towards the end here, which hasn't happened yet, but towards the end here, he will find success because he pushed through and he learned new things, and he learned to figure out what was going to get him to that thing. Even within that whole story arc, our micro story arcs, like this particular podcast episode, is a story arc unto itself, because not only am I understanding where I sit right now with this podcast in this particular episode, but I also understand how I'm going to take it from this moment until the next moment when I come back next season with a better idea, clearer vision about what I'm going to do next to make it better, not just for myself, but for you, the listener, the one that's hearing the story. So what does the storytelling arc thing mean to me? In the micro sense, it means wanting or having a desire to find and produce better content. And in that, hitting the struggles, hitting the tension, backing myself up against a wall at times, but then pushing through into the new area and trying to find new ways until a point where I find success with what I'm doing. On a much larger macro level, the story arc goes like this. Here I am, Dave over here, the artist, the person that's creating all this stuff and feels really great about all the stuff he does. Here through the middle of my tension, my struggle, my adversity, I'm learning that the journey is long and that I just need to persevere to get through it. And here, at this last moment of my life, the last breath of my life, I'm going to be smiling because I'm going to be dying with a camera in one hand and a brush in the other. So now you may be asking yourself, Dave, why are you telling all of this to us now? Maybe you're not asking that. I'm going to tell you anyway. The reason I'm telling you this now on this last episode of the podcast for this season, don't worry, I'm coming back. I'm going to be coming back with a more clearer vision about what the podcast means, what the videos mean, how I can do more storytelling, even more importantly, who I'm supposed to be talking to and what I'm supposed to be talking about. I had a conversation recently with my friend Stephanie, who is probably my closest business confidant. She and I go back and forth on business stuff all the time. I will link to her, Steph Gaudreau of Stupid Easy Paleo. She's an artist in her own right with quality food photography. She does really amazing stuff, but not the point. The point is that she is my soul sister when it comes to business-related topics. I reached out to her and I said, Steph, what's my thing? She looked me dead in the face across Facebook Messenger and said, Dave, you have a really good way of teaching people about creativity. And I had never thought about it like that before. The conversation was obviously a little bit longer than that, but in that moment, there was this epiphanal spark, this fire burning in my brain about where this all goes and what it all means. Basically, it comes down to this. I love talking with you artsy types. You people are great and fantastic and amazing. You bring me joy when you tell me stories about the stuff that I've talked about that's helped you. That is the best stuff ever. But you aren't the only people who need creative insight. There are plenty of people in this world that consider themselves creative, but maybe not necessarily artists. Case in point, my friend Stephanie, who is an exceptional photographer, but photography is not her profession. It's just something she does in regards to her profession. And occasionally, she needs a little creative kick in the pants to tell her what to do next with the work. The way I see it is that there are plenty of people out there that have a creative bone, but don't necessarily use it on a regular basis. Or there are a bunch of people out there that haven't quite built up those creativity muscles, and so they need a little bit of a push towards the creative side so that they understand that this is not something that's exclusive to you and I as artists and creators. How many times have you had somebody tell you, God, I wish I could paint or draw or design like you do. You're so creative. When you know, and I know, that we didn't just come to this naturally. We didn't just come out of the womb with a paintbrush in our hand and it's all of a sudden be able to paint the Sistine Chapel. That's not how it works. We had to build that muscle. We had to learn that creativity. We had to work it over years and years and years of hard struggle, tension, adversity. So now the way I see it is that I need to be talking to those people a little bit more because I believe those people need me maybe even a little bit more than you, maybe a lot more. And as I take these next few weeks off, I'm going to be trying to figure out how that all plays out. What does that look like? What is the story arc for that new scenario where I'm not just talking to the artsy types, but I'm also talking to the people that want a little bit more creative impulse in their life. Now, of course, being artists and makers and things, you're going to get some value out of it just as much as everybody else. In fact, you're going to be a little bit closer to the heart than most of all those people. But I believe this message will transcend. At least that's the goal. We'll see how it works. This is just the beginning of this new story arc. We'll see where it ends up. Okay, question of the day. Today's question comes from Connor again, because he seems to be the only person paying attention. What's wrong with you people? I gave you carte blanche to do whatever you wanted when it comes to asking questions, and you're not owning it, man. You have your opportunity, your day in the sun. Now I'm gonna have to give it to Connor again. I like Connor, so I'm happy to give it to him again. But he's already had a fair share, but he's gonna get some more because he's the one paying attention, losing out, because I'm gonna link to his ass and not yours. Anyway, Connor asks, when you take breaks, do you think about the work or do you let your mind drift off and totally forget about it until you go back into the studio? That is a fine question, Connor, and I'm glad you asked. The truth is, it depends. Sometimes the breaks are meant for decompressing, for shut off, for not doing anything. To say, I'm on vacation for real. I'm not going to consider even looking at anything art-related, work-related, anything. I'm just going to go enjoy myself. Now, of course, I'm still going to find myself up on Instagram and Facebook because I'm probably going to have things I want to share, but I'm not focusing on any of the business, any of the work, because I believe that it's important sometimes to check out 100%, or at least as much as you possibly can, because it's going to refresh your mind so that you can come back into it clear, focused, energized. In this particular break that I'm taking right now, I will probably take a considerable amount of time to just do nothing. Maybe make some art because art makes me feel good, but I'm not going to be focused on the business side of stuff. I'm not going to be focused on creating content. Will I share? Yes. Will it be all the time? Maybe on Instagram, but nowhere else. I don't know. We'll see. Just have to follow me everywhere to see what I do. You can do that at Dave Conrey, pretty much all those places. Now, that being said, sometimes these breaks are not meant to be vacations. They're just meant to give us an opportunity to focus on a different thing, a different project, a different part of our business, a different part of what we're doing. Sometimes we just have so much on our plate, we need to push some of it to the side so we can finish the stuff that's important. Sometimes the broccoli needs to be eaten last so that we can focus on the steak and potatoes. If you didn't guess, I'm not a big fan of broccoli. I eat it because it's good for me, but I don't always want to. So yes, there are times when you should take a break and do nothing, but then there are times when those breaks are important for the work that you're doing so that you can do that thing, just not the all things. Sometimes you don't want all the things. You just want some of the things or one of the things. It's all important. It's all important. Give yourself breaks now and then from some of it or all of it so that you can come back with a new perspective, fresh ideas, new way of thinking, more creativity, better stories. See how I wrapped that up in a nice tidy package for you? Connor, since nobody else is paying attention. Okay, artist of the day. Energetic enough? Artist of the day! Today's artist of the day is a man by the name of Dave Clark, who is my friend, lives here in Long Beach. He's also responsible for the art show, the 18 by 18 art show that's going to be happening here in Long Beach. He is the man who created the tables that we are decorating so that everybody can showcase them at the event on November 4th. But I want to share Dave's work because I think he does some pretty creative, cool stuff with tables. Tables that you would not think were tables. They're really art. I wouldn't set my coffee cup on this one, but it's still pretty badass. This one's kind of neat in a kind of 80s retro. It's very postmodern, but it's got these little weird, the crazy finials at the bottom. So it's neat, plus it's black. You know how I like that. These ones here look very Beetlejuice. In fact, if you see his table in the table show, these will look kind of familiar. Yeah, he likes concrete, metal. Everybody likes a little metal. That's a proper shout out for Dave. Go find Dave's work at daveclarkdesigns.com. He is also on Instagram as daveclark55. It'd be really cool if his name was Dave Clark 5 because that's a old jazz band, I think. Anyway, Dave Clark 55 on Instagram, daveclarkdesigns.com. I will link to everything in the description down below. All right, kids, I'm going to wrap this sucker up because the battery is going to die and I don't want to go into the house and go get a new battery. So we're just going to say, listen, I'll be back after a while. Go check out the archives if you haven't listened to everything yet. More importantly, go to youtube.com/Dave Conrey and subscribe. Hit the little bell to get notified when I come back because you don't want to miss a thing. I promise you I will be back towards the end of this month. In fact, I believe Halloween is my first episode of the podcast back. That's it, folks. I'm done. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being a watcher and listener. Can't wait to come back to have some really great creative storytelling stuff to do. We'll see what we can make of this. But until then, remember, be good today, be even better tomorrow. See you soon.